Well, good evening there, YTPC community. This is old preacher man Piper coming to you, Doc Hatfield. Believe it or not, this pipe is called City of Luke. Yep. And underneath that it says Uncle Paul. Now, you want me to tell you about it? I can't. I've had the thing for dadgum many years. I can't remember where I got it. Can't remember nothing about it. Probably haven't smoked it now in probably 3 or 4 years. I saw it over there and I said, well, I might as well pick that up and smoke that pipe. Yeah. You know, just to make it, just to do it. Anyway, so I've been on here watching so many of your videos and just enjoying the heck out of all of them. And wanted to tell you how much I appreciate everybody subbing my channel, and wanted to tell you that I'm getting together some stuff for a gall. I think it's about time I did it, since I got over 250 subs already. And I just appreciate all of y'all so much. It's just amazing how that you've been so kind. Everybody's been telling me how much they enjoy my stories and enjoy talking about my life and so forth. I think whenever I left off on the last video, I would tell you about how I found out who I was and how I come to know that I'm a Hatfield. I was preaching a revival in Amarillo, Texas, in a church. I can't remember the name of it now. It's been way back so many years ago, and back in the early 70s. And I was preaching every night, and the place was just full to overflowing, about 400 or 500 people. And in the back of the church, a lady stood and never sat down during the service. But she never took her eyes off of me, no matter where I went on the platform or whatever I did. She never took her eyes off of me. And every time that the service went to end, she would slip out the back and go out. So after about the third night, I asked the pastor, I said, you know who that lady is? He said, I don't have any idea. I never saw her before. Said, she's kind of fixated on you for some reason. I said, I know it. I said, I know I'm good looking, but I said, come on now. I said, I'd like to find out who she is. Well, it come along there on Saturday night, and she was back on Saturday night, and was there every night, but she was back on Saturday night. I told the pastor, I said, tonight now, when I go to close the service, I want you to close the service. And while you're closing the service, I'm going to sneak out this side door and see if I can catch that woman when she leaves. Well, sure enough, whenever I got through with the service, I turned it over to him, and he had everybody bow their heads, and she slipped out there, and I slipped out the side, and I caught that woman. And I said, ma'am, I said, you're here every night, you're standing back in the back, you never sit down, you keep your eyes on me all the time. Is there something I can do for you? Is there something that you need? What is it? And she said, can I ask you a question? I said, yes. was you adopted in Altus, Oklahoma? I said, well, yes, I was. And she said, tell me, she asked me how old I was. I told her. She said, yeah. I said, why? Why are you asking all that? And she said, because I think you're my son. I said, well, to be honest with you, I've been looking. I've been looking all over this country for my real people. And I said, where do you live? She said, I just live up here about 2 blocks. And she told me exactly where she lived. And I said, look, could I, as soon as the service is over and everybody's left, could I come over and have a talk with you? She said, well, I would love for you to do that. And she said, I'll have you a cup of coffee ready. I said, well, you're talking up my alley. So whenever the service was over, I said to the pastor, I said, you mind if I call home? He said, well, no, go in there and use your phone. See, back then there wasn't no such thing as a cell phone. So I went in there and I got on the telephone and called her. My mother answered the phone and I said, is Dad there? I need to talk to him. And of course, they had 2 phones in the house, and she hollered at him and said, get on the other phone. She said, JD's on the phone. And so he got on the phone, and I said, need to ask you a question. You told me that my mother and daddy were killed because they were bank robbers. But I have a lady here tonight that don't know me from Adam, but she knows more about me than anybody else around here, and I've not told anybody else the things she's told me. And she thinks that I'm her son. And boy, I mean, right out of the clear blue sky, my mother said, that's a damn lie. And I said, whoa, the preacher's wife a cursing. I said, what's the world coming to? And she said, I'll prove it. So she took off, and I said to him, I said, is this possible? I said, I really need to know. This has gone on long enough. I said, now I really need to know the truth. I need to know who. I said, this woman has been at the revival every single night this week. She stood in the back. She's never said a word, but she's never taken her eyes off of me the whole time that I was up playing the piano, I was singing, I was preaching, I said everything. Up until the service closed, and as the service closed, she slips out. But she's back every night. Tonight, I caught her. I went out the side door and caught her. I said, she knows my age. She knows where I was adopted. I said, she thinks I'm her son. What says that she isn't? And so about that time, my mother got back on the phone. She said, I can prove it. Your mother's dead, and you might as well just get it. I said, well, prove it to me. Prove to me that. Don't just tell me that. Prove it to me. Well, I'm going to prove it to you right now. And she told me, she said, I want you to call Mountain View, Oklahoma. And she told me who to ask for in Mountain View, Oklahoma. And I said, okay. And she said, now, they're probably all dead, but said there might be somebody there that still answers to that name, and they might know something. And that's all I can tell you. Can't tell you nothing else. Won't tell you nothing else if I knew it. I said, okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. So I went over to this lady's house. And I told her, I said, ma'am, I said, well, I got ahead of myself there. Let me back up just a minute here. So anyway, I said to my mother, I said, now you're gonna tell me that I'm gonna find out for sure that this lady is not my mother. She said, well, what's that woman's name? And I told her what the woman's name was. She said, you just hang on for just a minute. Because, see, now my mother and dad, back in the time that I was a wee one, that's what they did. He pastored a church, but he also helped the state find parents for children that needed a home, find children for parents that wanted to adopt a child. And on his say-so alone, they got the child. And so she come back and she said, she said, you probably don't remember. But she said, you weren't in our home but just a few days, and said, your dad opened the door and said there was a basket on the front porch, and in that basket was a baby. Well, I'd heard that story over and over, and I said, yeah, I remember you telling me something about that. He said, well, that's probably the child she's thinking about, and said that child ended up in a very nice home. I said, okay, thank you. So then I turned around and I called Mountain View, Oklahoma, and I asked for this person. She answers the phone. And I said, ma'am, I said, do you know a Reverend Wayne in Bowdoin? And she said, oh, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. And she dropped the phone, and you could just hear it bounce, 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 bounce. And she picked up the phone and she said, when did he die? And I said, when did who die? When did my grandson, Buster, when did he die? And I said, did they adopt your grandson? Yes, they did. I said, well, ma'am, I must be Buster. Because every time my mother got mad at me, she called me Buster. I always thought she just did it as a slang word, but now I see it meant something. And I said, can I ask you something? And she said, yes. I said, is my mother alive? She said, no, son. No, your mother died years ago. Years ago, you were just a wee one. And I said, well, I'm in revival right now. She said, can I ask you a question? What do you mean you're in revival? I said, I'm preaching a revival in Amarillo, Texas right now. And she said, well, could I ask you by chance, do you play the piano? And I said, well, yes, I do. And she just started to cry. She said, oh, that's wonderful, that's wonderful. That's an answer to prayer, an answer to prayer, an answer to prayer. I said, well, I'll tell you, the morning service in the morning is the last service of the revival. How about I come over there and meet you in person? I said, it'll take me about 3 or 4 hours to get there. And she said, that would be lovely. Well, after I talked to her, I went over to this other lady's house and I told her what all I'd been told. And I said, be honest with you, I was kind of excited to find out I might have found my mother. But I said, I think I've talked to my real grandmother, and she's told me that my mother has passed on. I'll know more about it tomorrow afternoon. I said, but I wanted to come over here and tell you in person. I didn't want to just call you, and I wanted to just tell you in person. And we had a cup of coffee, and we talked for a while. Then I left. Then that Sunday afternoon, I went to Mountain View, Oklahoma. I drove up to this house, knocked on the door, and there was my grandmother. And she grabbed me and she hugged me. And after we talked for a little bit, I said, could I indulge you just a little bit? You probably don't have any idea, but I just wondered. I always dreamed that I was standing beside a shotgun house with no paint on it, with a bed springs hanging on the side of the house, and with a two-car garage behind me, and I was standing in the driveway with a girl, and the house and the garage behind me didn't have no doors on it, and it didn't have no paint on it. And she got up and she went in and she got a picture and brought a picture in out of a shoebox and handed me a picture, and she said, "That little boy there, that's you." And there I was, standing there, no bigger than a flea, and I was there with a girl. I said, "Well, who's the girl?" He said, "That's your cousin." I said, "I have a cousin?" She said, "Yes. She lives in Montana." And so I said, "Well, do you know anything about me ever trying to eat an onion?" She said, "Oh, you were the worst thing in the world. You were the worst thing in the world." She said, "You wasn't 3 months old and you was trying to grab an onion and eat it." And she said, "We kept trying to take it away from you, and you kept grabbing it back, and we took it away from you, and you grabbed it back." And I said, "Well, can you tell me about my mother?" And she said, "Well, that's a very sad story, and I don't know if you want to hear it or not." And I said, "Well, I'd like to know the truth. I'd like to know the truth about everything." I said, "What's my name?" She said, "Your name is Buster J. Hatfield. Your great-granddaddy was Devil Anse Hatfield. Your granddaddy was Buster Hatfield. You were named after him." So that's how I come to know that I'm a Hatfield. Now, I'll wait till next time because this is taking up too much time. I'm long-winded, you know. I'm a long-winded preacher. You haven't heard me preach yet, or you'd know it. I'm a long-winded preacher. First message I ever preached, I preached for 40 minutes. And it like to just shocked everybody because most of the preachers, boys that preached their first sermons there, preached about 10, 15 minutes. So I'm long-winded. I'm sorry about that, but I just am. And but I'll come back again and tell you. I'll tell you the story, but I'll probably tell it to you the way that I've written it in the book, and but you'll understand it whenever I tell you the next time. In the meantime, I pray that the good Lord will keep you and take care of you and watch over you, give you all a happy new year, and I pray that everybody will have a wonderful time during the new year, and I pray that the good Lord will watch over you, shower His grace upon you, give you all you need, take care of every circumstance, watch over you night and day. And until next time, I'll see you. Bye-bye.